now what we need to think about is how are we watching for progression in the molecular sense, and when is the proper time to act on that, not perhaps if it's proper to act on that.
Right. So it sounds, based on that statement, that you believe the testing that we have available right now is meaningful to detect certain mechanisms of resistance. Because in that situation, especially with ESR1 mutations, it's a when the resistance becomes problematic, not an if the resistance becomes problematic.
We have, and that's the great thing that, for example, SERENA-6, like it's a data mine. It's not just the outcomes from that trial that are helpful for us. We see in that and other trials where we've been able to see data regarding ESR emergence, or I should say estrogen receptor mutation emergence in actively treated metastatic estrogen receptor positive patients. What we see is 3 to 7 months. You're going to see that mutation, and within months, not a year, months, they're going to experience radiologic or clinical progression. So now that we have those data, there's really no question what's going to happen. Then that actually is a lovely time period where one could think, what is the next step before there's symptom? Is it time to change to something that targets that mutation? Is this the window for a clinical trial where we're not assured of an outcome in an asymptomatic patient? There are a lot of new windows that will open up because of this.
It gives us the opportunity to start thinking and planning and acting long before we were ever able to. And I think it also leads into our decision making in the second line for these patients, which is so complicated. And, you know, we don't have the data that really reflects our modern standard of care in many ways, and we don't have answers to the sequencing questions we want. And I think inherently we're still struggling with picking out who is the best patient for endocrine-based therapy in the second line. Every trial we have shows that we lose response and patients get sicker within the first 8 to 12 weeks, right? At least a good chunk of them. And so I wonder, as I look at these first-line studies like SERENA-6, where we are getting information about those patients with early resistance, like would those curves look different if we intervene a little bit earlier? And so it's almost proof of concept, I think, in many ways, that although we have very active drugs in the second line, how do we move the needle for those patients that could be on first line therapy longer and then look better in a second line trial versus, you know, not acting in the best way for them in the second line early on?
I agree. And this is a point that's important to make that I think is often missed, which is what you're alluding to with once you have endocrine resistance and you're moving to a second or sometimes a third line of endocrine therapy in these ER positive, not HER2 amplified patients, right? You see the fall off. So if somebody just looks at progression-free survival, then the statement's going to be no treatment looks good here, right? So when you're talking about fulvestrant monotherapy, an oral SERD monotherapy, if you don't look at the data in the way that perhaps would be more helpful, which is looking at 6, 12, 24-month progression-free survival potential, you miss the fact that there is this subset of endocrine-sensitive patients still, right? And then you see that there are benefits to some of these treatments that target the mutation. But since you have that symptomatic fall off of the majority of patients, it looks like second or third line endocrine therapy doesn't work, that you need to jump more quickly to parenteral therapies, chemotherapies, antibody drug conjugates, and really that's not the case.